Many know about slavery, but few discuss paper genocide. We did not all come from Africa, and most of us have Aboriginal roots that were stripped away due to reclassification and miseducation. As a native Black American and a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation, I understand the importance of tracing your lineage. If you want to learn how to trace your genealogy and apply for tribal citizenship, go to nativeblackancestry.com to schedule a consultation.
They don't want you to remember this. You not no slave, you indigenous. Fuck how they painted them Indians. You went to war with the French and the British, man. Quite frankly, you was kings, Merovingians. They took the women and men, made them prisoners, raised up the children to worship their images, set up a lab to the genes and they mixed them, and this shit get way deeper than your pigment.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, smash the like button on the way in. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the Cash App or the PayPal if you support the mission. You can also hit the super chat, become a member of the channel like Miss Coco. I appreciate the support, Coco. Shout out to our first member since we've got the channel remonetized. Oh, yes, we are back, y'all. We are back. It's up and it's stuck. I tell y'all. Now, we've been doing some interesting live streams as of late, really highlighting our Aboriginal heritage, coming through with a lot of heavy-handed facts, primary sources, receipts, if you will. And pardon me, allergies been tearing me up all day, okay? If you suffer from allergies, you know when the seasons start changing, oh boy, when the seasons start changing. But guys, we're gonna go ahead and do a live stream here on YouTube and TikTok simultaneously. If there's anybody who would like to call in, I'm gonna drop the StreamYard link here in just a second so the folks on YouTube can call in. We're going to get the live stream queued up on TikTok as well and have some live callers over there. But basically, we're going to just take the time to have a bit of a community discussion, a powwow, if you will, and discuss what they don't want us to discuss. Come on. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Now, as far as the TikTok live stream, we are now live on TikTok. For those of you tuning in on YouTube, you can find me on TikTok, Mike TV. I've also got another TikTok called Native Black Ancestry, so check me out over there. Or for the folks viewing on TikTok, you can check me out on YouTube, Mike TV, as well as Native Black Ancestry. If there's anybody on YouTube that wants to call in early, go for it. We do have some thought-provoking questions queued up this evening. We typically get a lot of trolls over on TikTok, so it should get in pretty exciting, guys. Should get pretty exciting. But as far as the questions for this evening, what am I feeling? What am I feeling? You know what? We'll do a bit of a rehash. I want to pull this up. Here we go. Here we go. Perfect. Now, for the folks tuning in on TikTok, you guys cannot see. Oh, no, you guys can see it. Yes. But you know what? That's the wrong one. I want the folks on TikTok to get a different line of questioning. I want to make sure that it matches what's going on over here on YouTube. Here we go. Here we go. So, yes, question number one. Why are so many people upset that Black Americans are acknowledging their indigenous American roots, but they had no issue when Black folks claimed to be Moors, Hebrews, Nubians, etc., etc.? Question number two. Did you know that the Americas have more pyramids than Africa? Question number three. If most Black Americans are said to descend from African slaves, why do U.S. Census records from the 1700s and 1800s list so many free people of color, but so few actual Africans? Question number four. Who benefits more from us believing that we're from Africa? Us or the same people who stole our land? Let's talk about it, y'all. Let's talk about it. If anybody wants to weigh in, you know what to do. And while we wait to see if we got some live callers tuning in, I got some content from our boy UBTV I want to pull up. You guys make sure to check out UBTV on YouTube. And here we go. Perfect. Let's go ahead and get this screen share popping. A lot of folks want to talk about DNA testing and haplogroups ships and we're all from Africa. Yeah. Let's debunk a lot of that nonsense.
Imagine millions more people claiming indigenous heritage. And think about the amount of money, land, and resources the federal government would have to commit to those people on their behalf. But at its root, the true reason for this DNA propaganda is to push the false historical narrative of all Black Americans being from Africa for the purposes of countering our will to claim what is rightfully ours.
Well, when I went to Harvard in 1991, I raised money to count the slaves. There were a group of scholars who were trying to count the number of Africans brought to the New World, the entire New World in the slave trade. And some were in Liverpool, some were in Angola, some were in Cuba, some were in Brazil, all these scholars. And someone came to me and said, if you raise money, that you could bring these people together, it would be historic. And that's what we did. The result, you could go home and look at it. It's free online. It's called the Transatlantic Slave Trade Database. And these scholars looked at 36,000 voyages of slave ships. It was captured.
And the Transatlantic Slave Trade Database says that only 300,000 African slaves were shipped to North America. Yet we have over 45 million Black Americans present day, and it is logistically impossible to take a sample slave population of 300,000 and have that balloon into over 45 million people. I don't care whether it's been 300 years, 600 years, or 900 years. The math ain't mathin'.
So the records were there. It was property, right? And those records are still there. And guess what? They counted 12.5 million Africans shipped between 1502 and 1867 to the New World.
To the New World. That does not mean the United States. That does not mean North America. That means the Americas. North America, Caribbean, Central America, South America. They claim 12 million were shipped to the Americas, about 10 to 11 million survived, and only 300,000, less than 4%, went to North America.
12.5 million, 15% about died in the Middle Passage. So let's say 11.2 million, we know, Africans, our ancestors, got off the slave ships in the New World. Here's the amazing fact. Of that 11.2 million, only 450,000 came to the United States. Only 450,000 Africans came to the United States between 1619 and, well, the end of slavery was 1865, but most of 99% of the slaves are here by 1820. All the rest, over 10.5 million, went to places essentially south of San Diego, Texas, and Miami.
Yeah, like Brazil, like the Caribbean. Come on, y'all. Look how they still trying to play in our face.
Although Gates is one of the largest proponents of African ancestry, he himself has written about the relatively small amount of African slaves brought to North America in comparison to slaves placed in other areas. In fact, a direct quote from Gates states that only about 388,000 slaves were shipped directly to North America, which is estimated less than 5% of total Africans shipped through the transatlantic slave trade. These are the accounted numbers of African slavery between the years of 1525 and 1866, a span of approximately 341 years, which means annually, on average, just over 1,000 slaves from Africa actually made it to mainland North America. To further complicate these surprisingly small numbers of Africans in North America is the surprisingly large numbers of Negroes in America, who are presumed to be of African descent. So if, according to the top African scholar and database, only 388,000 Africans total made it to North America, what's to account for the dramatic spike in population among Negro slaves in the South between the years of 1790 and 1860.
The spike in slave population comes from them displacing and capturing indigenous communities of the Southeast and enslaving them in place and relabeling them as African. Oh, but that's such a crazy notion, Mike. That's so conspiratorial to suggest that Europeans would, during the process of taking Indian land, they're already killing them, they're already murdering, they're already taking their land, right? But it's so crazy to think that they would also capture them as slaves and make them work the land that they're expert agriculturalists on behalf of these Europeans who are now in control. I mean, what makes more sense? That they would do that, or that they would import Africans from the other side of the world?
These numbers suggest that the African slave population had multiplied by 10 times. So the obvious question should be asked: what was the birth and mortality rate of a slave in the late 1700s?
Birth rate low, mortality rate high, which is why it's logistically impossible to say that the slave population grew naturally from 300,000 to 45 million that we have present day.
Well, as expected, the birth rate was extremely low
Come on,
and
y'all.
the mortality rate extremely high. Most women miscarried their unborn child due to the inherent physical strain that forced manual labor in treacherous seasonal conditions puts on a woman's body. As well, most women preferred to miscarry rather than to birth a child into a life of pain and captivity. In addition to the excessively low birth rate of enslaved captives was the extremely high mortality rate among the enslaved. Male slaves were worked like farm animals for their entire lives until their bodies gave out and were no longer to physically perform manual tasks. Then they were simply taken out back and murdered once they were no use to their masters. For male slaves, this happened around the age of 25, if they were lucky enough to live that long. Because according to records, the life expectancy of a male slave was around 23 years old, and the life expectancy of a female slave was a bit longer, due to the fact that some women worked domestic duties that weren't as physically strenuous as working in the field, therefore allowing them to live longer lives. However, these extremely short life expectancies and high mortality rates are in direct contradiction to the increased slave numbers in the South. At no point during captivity were enslaved peoples ever multiplying in numbers via new birth rates. So how could numbers of slaves increase if they weren't being born on the plantation and not being newly shipped from Africa after 1808?
I came across Mike on YouTube and I decided to give his service a try. I booked the consultation. He was on time. He was very lenient. I was a little bit late. He was on time, but no worries. So he took care of me. And we started off with a history lesson and about the Pueblo people or the ancestral people of this land, what they look like as from the testimonials of the original Spaniards. He walked me through the process of the areas of the nation that these folks were located in, and he actually traced it all the way back to my home city of Philadelphia. But anyway, and he also went into Ancestry, broke that down for me to show me how I could do it on my own or use his service. And he was very concise and very professional. And as I stated before, it's almost like a history lesson, a great history lesson on the very high possibilities that one of my family members are part of the Native American tribe. So I recommend his service, and I'm going to recommend it to my other family members as well. So with that being said, yes, give him a try. It's awesome.
We see the increase in population, but that population cannot be related to normal population growth or the arrival of new Africans. So where did these 4 million new people come from? Of course, they were already here and being forcibly removed from their homelands by the invading heathens from Europe. From the earliest remnants of the earliest colonies to survive, such as Jamestown, and until the Civil War, indigenous Indians were being conquered, captured, and reclassified into the words and hands of their enemies. And the word American takes on a totally new image than its original personification.
Come on, y'all. Let's talk about it. The original definition of American, a native of America originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. Let's talk about it. This thumbnail wasn't created with AI. This is a portrait that a European made of indigenous people of South America. Hey, you tell me why Europeans are painting all these black indigenous folks. Riddle me that.
What did the Indians look like when the heathens came? According to multiple accounts, the Indians were black and resembled the physical features most commonly associated with Negroes. But when people think of Indians, they don't think of Negroes. Most people think of a Euro-Mongoloid hybrid as a result of the deceptive intentions of academia.
Come on, y'all. That's why I took the time to build out the website nativeblack.ancestry.com. On nativeblack.ancestry.com, I actually have a digital archive with over 600 documents where you can see family photos, newspaper clippings, Black Indian obituaries, ex-Indigenous slave interviews, Indian slave ads. The list goes on and on and on. I've curated a lot of information here for you guys to shorten the learning curve when it comes to learning about our indigenous history here in the Americas. So definitely make sure to check out the website nativeblack.ancestry.com. And if any of you need like personalized guidance with genealogy research, you can even have access to my calendar and book a one-on-one consultation where I show you the 3-step process that me and my family use to trace our heritage and get tribal citizenship with the Muskogee Creek Nation back in 2021. And as always, you know, as a thank you for visiting the website, you can download a free copy of my ebook, Reclassified, The Hidden History of Black Indians in the Southeast from Indian to Negro. Let me see what the chat's talking about real quick. Let me see. Oh, yeah, shout out to Vixen. I think Vixen was saying that they booked a consultation. Look forward to connecting with you, Vixen. Shout out to Empress in the building. Nice to see Empress and Miss Johnson. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. And let's get back to the show.
But what would the gatekeepers of academia have to gain by hiding the original ethnicity of the people of North America? It's quite simple. By creating an entire historical narrative behind Cauco-Mongolo-centrism, they were able to change the face of world history. And by changing the face of world history, the indigenous people of the land known as America remained under the bondage of profane barbarians and godless spirits born of evil men. When we take a closer look at the transatlantic slave trade database, it appears that the vessels with the most slaves were shipped between different destinations in the Americas rather than from the continent of Africa to America. According to the Intra-American Slave Trade Database, in the year 1700, a ship captained by Charles Duval shipped 308 slaves from an unspecified location in the Americas to Cartagena, Colombia. In 1760, Thomas Lorraine.
Yeah, guys, this is very true. I've got a genealogy client where I found an ancestor of theirs that was enslaved. I even found the shipping manifest. I found the destination that they were shipped from, where they were shipped to. And guess what? Their ancestor was shipped as a slave from Savannah, Georgia to Charleston, South Carolina. Yeah. So much for coming from Africa, huh?
Shipped over 300 slaves on the vessel named Viper in 2 trips to Portobello, Panama. In 1786, an unnamed ship transferred 170 slaves from an unspecified location in the Americas to New Orleans. From this examination, it is clear to see that there was a well-ingrained practice of capturing groups of indigenous people from different territories in the Americas and displacing them in foreign enclaves. Some of these foreign ports in which the people were delivered to be sold were in cities such as, most popularly, Charleston, South Carolina, a major slave trading hub in the Old South, formerly known as Charlestown, named after King Charles II of England. Other trafficking hubs include Savannah, Georgia, another southern city whose entire history and economy was built off the slave trade. Also, cities like New Orleans, an area colonized by the French, was populated with Indians who had been shipped from other areas of the Americas. Many of these people were forcibly displaced from areas in Canada and New England known as Acadia, and once becoming slaves under French rule, the offspring of an Indian and Frenchman became known as a Cajun. Throughout this era of human trafficking, original locations from which people were being shipped had been hidden to furthermore geographically alienate them from possibly finding a way to orientate their locations. This was meant to confuse the captives. Many people were taken from the Caribbean islands of Antigua and then transferred to the mainland, as well as people being shipped from island to island, as in the case with General Lincoln, a vessel that in 1799 delivered 50 slaves from Antigua to Havana. The practice of transferring American Indian captives and placing them in unfamiliar lands on the same continent was well documented, but suspiciously overlooked by modern historians.
They don't want you to remember this. You not no slave, you indigenous. Fuck how they painted them Indians. You went to war with the French and the British men. Quite frankly, you was kings Merovingians. They took the women and men, made them prisoners, raised up the children to worship their images, set up a lab to the genes and they mixed them. And this shit get way deeper than your pigment.